In the autumn of 1869, in the modest coastal town of Porbandar, a child was born who would, in time, alter the course of an empire. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi entered the world into a family of privilege and tradition. His father, a respected administrator in the princely state of Kathiawar. Though afforded the comforts of his station, his early life was steeped in the strictures of Hindu orthodoxy and the quiet discipline of a devout household. A boy of unassuming nature, he exhibited no remarkable promise, save for a deep-seated sense of moral duty instilled by his mother's piety and his father's integrity. His formal education, as was customary among those of his rank, led him to England, where he was to study law at the Inner Temple in London. It was here, amid the gaslit streets and the refined manners of Victorian society, that he first encountered the weight of his own inadequacies. Shy and uncertain, he struggled to reconcile his provincial upbringing with the expectations of an English gentleman. Yet in this crucible of self-doubt he forged a quiet resolve. He immersed himself in legal studies, adopted the sartorial sensibilities of an Englishman, and dabbled in the philosophies of the West, reading Ruskin and Tolstoy with earnest fascination. Upon being called to the bar, he returned to India, a barrister in title but bereft of any true legal acumen, failing to establish himself in the profession. Fate, however, had other designs. A fortuitous engagement drew him to South Africa in 1893, where he was to serve as legal counsel for a Gujarati firm in Durban. It was here, aboard a train to Pretoria, that the defining moment of his political awakening transpired. Cast from his carriage, despite possessing a first-class ticket, he confronted for the first time the unyielding cruelty of racial discrimination. This singular indignity ignited within him a fervor hitherto unknown, and the barrister became the agitator. What began as a legal defense of the rights of his fellow Indians soon evolved into a broader struggle as he developed his doctrine of passive resistance, or Satyagraha, a principle rooted in civil disobedience, moral fortitude, and the inexorable power of truth. By the time he returned to India in 1914, he had already garnered a reputation as a champion of the oppressed. The country he re-entered, however, was one bristling with discontent. The dominion of the British Raj, once seen as an unshakable edifice, was beginning to show signs of fissure. The Great War had drained Britain's resources, and the promise of gradual self-governance had been met with repression rather than reform. Sensing the moment ripe for action, he travelled the breadth of the subcontinent, immersing himself in the plight of the common man. He lent his voice to the indigo farmers of Champaran, challenged the extortionate taxes imposed upon the peasants of Kedah, and, with each victory, grew ever more indispensable to the nationalist cause. Yet it was in 1919, with the passage of the draconian Rowlatt Acts, that Gandhi transformed from a mere agitator to the undisputed leader of India's struggle for self-rule. His call for non-violent non-cooperation sent tremors through the foundations of the Raj. British cloth was burned, government institutions shunned, and the machinery of the empire, long thought to be invulnerable, found itself paralyzed. But the movement was not without its costs. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre in Amritsar, where hundreds of unarmed civilians fell to British bullets, revealed the brutal lengths to which the rulers would go to maintain their dominion. In its wake, Gandhi pressed on, refining his methods, appealing not only to the intellect of the Indian elite, but also to the hearts of the peasantry. The decade that followed saw him rise to near mythic status. The Salt March of 1930, in which he and his followers defied the empire by producing their own salt, was an act of defiance so simple yet so potent that it captured the imagination of the world. The frail man in a homespun loincloth had become the conscience of a nation. Though imprisoned time and again, his influence only grew. his voice undiminished by iron bars. The Quit India movement of 1942, launched in the throes of the Second World War, signaled the beginning of the end for British rule, as the colonial grip loosened under the strain of internal strife and global conflict. Yet, for all his triumphs, Gandhi's greatest failure lay in his inability to forestall the horrors of partition. He had long preached Hindu-Muslim unity, yet as the hour of independence neared, the forces of communal division proved insurmountable. August 1947 saw the birth of two nations, but also the carnage of one of history's largest and most brutal displacements. Though he walked barefoot through the blood-stained streets of Bengal, pleading for peace, his was a voice drowned in the fury of vengeance and reprisal. The land he had fought to free now burned in an inferno of its own making. At the heart of this unfolding tragedy stood another figure of immense historical consequence, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Once allies in the struggle for self-rule, their paths had long since diverged. Where Gandhi sought unity through moral persuasion, Jinnah pursued a pragmatic, legalistic approach. The two men, so different in temperament, came to embody two competing visions of the subcontinent's future. Gandhi, the ascetic, clad in homespun cloth, appealing to the masses. Jinnah, the aristocrat, precise in speech and dress, championing constitutionalism. In the end, it was Jinnah's vision that prevailed, and Pakistan was born. To many in India, Gandhi remained the Mahatma, the father of their nation. To Pakistan, he was a figure of the past, a man whose dream of unity had failed in the face of history's tide. In the twilight of his life, his influence waned, his ideals dismissed as relics of a bygone age. On the 30th of January 1948, as he made his way to evening prayer, a man emerged from the crowd, raised a pistol and fired. Nathuram Godse, driven by the belief that Gandhi had betrayed India to appease its Muslim population, silenced him forever. Thus ended the life of the man whom the world had christened the Mahatma, the Great Soul. Yet, as the dust of history settles, his legacy endures in paradox. To some, he remains the father of a nation, a beacon of moral fortitude and unwavering principle. To others, he is a man of contradictions, whose steadfast idealism failed to reckon with the harsh realities of power and division. His doctrine of non-violence has inspired movements from Martin Luther King Jr. to Nelson Mandela. Yet in the very land he freed, his name is oft invoked but seldom followed. His image adorns banknotes. His words are etched in stone. Yet the society he envisioned, one of harmony, simplicity and truth, remains elusive. Perhaps therein lies the final irony of his life, that the man who sought to liberate India from its chains found himself bound by the very forces he sought to tame. His India is free, but at what cost? We trust this account has been of interest. Share your reflections in the comments, and let us know which historical figures you would like us to explore next.